Father Johnson, what are you doing here? Dean said with perplexity, staring at the priest. Stepping closer, Father Johnson drew his sword, pointing it at Merelias. I am doing God's work. Demons belong in hell, and all evil shall be smitten by the Lord's glory. Avoiding close contact with the blade, Merelias stepped backwards. Well, not disagreeing there, but you see, there are some issues with that. He spoke with false enthusiasm. Dean wondered what it was that made his demonic friend so afraid of the weapon. If ordinary blades couldn't kill him, then why did he suddenly seem afraid? Looking closer at the blade, the young man had to admit there was something otherworldly about it, something he couldn't quite name. How did you find me this time anyhow? I crossed the bloody pond. Twice. Merelias spit the words in frustration. The priest stopped closing in on him and held up a vial of red liquid. I took some of your blood the last time we fought. I used it to locate you. He grinned triumphantly. And once I knew where you were going. I used it for that. He snapped his fingers. The sound echoed unnaturally loud through the archive. Suddenly a circle glowed in a red light around Merelias. Trying to break out before the ban would be active, he cursed. Damn it. Unable to escape the binding, he dropped to one knee as if a heavy boulder had been placed on his shoulders. Responding to their friend in danger, Dean stepped in front of the circle and Nathaniel raised his gun at the priest. But the old man only smiled. I would advise you to not do that. Everyone in the archive's upper floors would know if you shoot me. You need to give me a better reason, Nathaniel said, seemingly unimpressed by the threat. Dean placed his hand on Nate's shoulder and mouthed, "Don't." But Father Johnson just sneered at the cowboy. Listen to your superior? It's what they taught you in the war, isn't it? Or was there no order among slavers and rebels? It's probably why you lost. For a moment, Dean thought his friend might pull the trigger, as the insult continued. By the way, the deepest circles of hell are reserved for treacherous men like you. But then he looked at Dean. Pure hatred mingled with agony lay in his friend's eyes. With still trembling hands, Nathaniel managed to lower his coat, even if it obviously took every inch of self-control he had. He clenched his fists and glared daggers at the priest, but remained still. Now, if you would be so kind and let me do my duty, Father Johnson started as Dean cut in. No. No one said a word as the two men stared at each other. Slowly the father's countenance turned into something between grave and somber. Then you leave me no choice, my son. He put the lantern on the ground and placed his left hand in front of him. Too late, Dean realized that the tattoo on the back of Johnson's hand was a complex summoning circle. Strands of light flickered from the priest's hand towards them. Just in time, Dean managed to warn the others to jump away from the spot they were standing in to avoid the following explosion. Wood splintered and dust surrounded them, making it difficult to see. Aghast, Dean turned around in search of Melissa, but couldn't find his fiancée. Quickly he stumbled towards the hole in the floor, big enough for a horse to fit through. Clinging to the fractured planks, she dangled in the air. Beneath her, several feet of empty air and bookshelves from the floor below. Another explosion hurled Dean away from the hole and into the opposite direction. He was about to skid into one of the many bookshelves when Nathaniel grabbed him from behind. Getting to his feet, he turned to where Melissa was still struggling, but his friend held him back. Melissa, you need to fight that bastard. I get you, girl. Dean gave a single nod in acknowledgement. Lost in mist and darkness, the young man didn't know where to turn. The flames had been extinguished and Merelias' prison was the only source of light, barely illuminating the hole next to him. Dean recognized the father as a passing shadow in front of the red circle. The first thing he did was summon a wall of fire, separating the priest from his friends. Wiping away some of the circle's chalk lines, he changed the symbol to summon a bolt of lightning. What happened next left the occultist puzzled. Father Johnson greeted the oncoming lightning with his sword, which absorbed the deadly energy without delay. Thrusting the blade into the floor, the absorbed energy rushed towards Dean. Quickly he drew a new symbol, erecting an invisible wall to shield himself from the reflected attack. Dean had to close his eyes as the light became too bright. With both hands placed on the ground in front of him, he withstood the impact, but the effort left him panting. Nessa's herbs had worn off, and the sear on his skin burned. Dean could hear Melissa's desperate screams as she still struggled to climb back up with Nathaniel's help. Ripped-out pages flew around him and his opponent from a bookshelf close by, shattered by the lightning which had shredded several scripts. His trench coat fluttered violently in the air, as did the priest's robes. Not wasting time, the old man charged at Dean, who awkwardly dodged the blade and ran through the still-standing shelves. He tripped a few times over books lying on the ground, almost invisible in the semi-dark light. A sudden sharp pain let Dean's legs give in, causing him to topple to the ground. He took a moment to catch his breath and use his senses. He could hear the burning fire and his own heavy breath, but not the man following him. Cautiously he got up and walked back towards the fire. The flash of a sword let Dean step back in time before the blade could slice through his abdomen. The view of Father Johnson catching his breath for a moment told Dean that the fight was wearing him down as well. Ignoring the throbbing seal, the young man summoned spikes of ice. One after another, they protruded from the ground towards the priest. But that attack too was countered when Johnson used his left hand to let the ice explode into shards. Carried by the blow, the sharp fragments hit Dean, cutting his arms and legs as he turned away to protect himself. With a racing heart, he took off again, sprinted towards his friends. He couldn't win this fight alone, not on a long shot. With sluggish movements and a blurry vision, he reached the high flames in front of Merlias. It struck him as stupid why he hadn't thought of it before, probably because he believed Father Johnson's spell might exceed his own skills. The spell had been woven with Merlias' blood. Perhaps Dean would be able to free his friend using his own blood combined with the demon's name. Ignoring the panic inside of him, he concentrated while drawing a circle for summoning a demon. Using his blood, he wrote his friend's name in the middle and placed his hand on the symbol. With his last strength, Dean activated the spell, falling to his knees. The drawn lines glowed brightly as a long crack fractured the floor from Dean's summoning to Johnson's seal. Slowly, the red light subsided like the last beams of the sun in the evening sky. Dean was fighting to stay conscious, yet the strain he had put on his body took its toll. Unable to move, he remained on his knees, helpless as Father Johnson approached with his sword held high. Dean didn't know if it was just due to his exhaustion, but the blade seemed to faintly radiate with an otherworldly light. "You are under demonic influence. Let me redeem your soul with this weapon blessed by the Lord." The priest's voice boomed as the young man looked up. He couldn't move. It felt as if the fire inside him had died. He saw how the father stood in front of him, ready to plunge his blade into Dean's heart. As suddenly another arm, clothed in red-brown garments, grabbed the father's hand. The sound of breaking bones rang out, followed by a pained outcry. "You have given in to wrath, dear father." Merlias' voice sounded even colder as the night they had first met. "One of the 7 deadly sins, if I'm not wrong." "I am fulfilling his will." Johnson defended himself between groans. The demon just looked at him intensely with a sinister grin. It was an expression Dean had never seen on his friend, an expression that showed how inhuman he truly was. Even Dean felt a chill run down his spine. "Look into your heart and ask yourself if that really is the truth." The grin grew into a smile when Merlias took the priest's collar and lifted him from the ground to whisper something into the man's ear. Upon hearing, Father Johnson stood in place like a statue, his eyes glued to Merlias, whose own ones now displayed a mischievous glint. "Well, well, how about showing us how good you can dance?" Like hypnotized, the priest suddenly started to jump and pirouette like a ballet dancer. Turning to Dean with a chuckle, Merlias helped him up. "How are you feeling?" "Fine, I guess," Dean uttered vaguely while watching the dancing father. "How is it that you can stand without support?" "Oi, watch your footwork," Merlias said to the priest before answering. Your summoning spell gave me a bit of strength. And my anger, I guess. A guilty expression crossed the demon's face before returning to the cheerful grin. It won't last long. He turned to Johnson, who tried to move very gracefully. Merlice gave him a thumbs up. Very good, carry on. Dean, are you hurt? Melissa came running with Nathaniel in tow. How did you get through the flames? The demonic companion wondered when Dean tried to remain standing despite Melissa throwing herself at him. Don't ask, Nate muttered in a slightly grumpy tone. The faint smell of burnt flesh wafted around the cowboy. Merlice must have noticed too. Being in high spirits, he started teasing at once. Hey, Nate, why do you smell like burnt chicken? I said, don't ask. The older man shot back, obviously evenly confused as annoyed about the high spirits Merlice was in. A dancing father caught their attention. How did you turn the murder priest into a dancer? Nathaniel asked curiously, resulting in a cocky smile from Merlice. Mendecia's spell is part of a bigger puzzle, but was originally created to make people do whatever you want. How did you know? Dean followed up. I wrote it. The demon replied as if it wasn't anything special. You. I wasn't just the maid down in hell. I was very high in the hierarchy, and I thought when I have all these resources at my disposal, I might as well add a bit of fun to it. And you called it Mendecia's spell. Dean raised one eyebrow. Well, you see, I didn't. I lost it in Rome. I wanted to hide it somewhere less arrogant. But sticks and stones, eh? The demon shrugged as Dean looked at him, clearly confused how someone like that could have been high in hell's hierarchy. You should be happy I'm here with you. My creation still harbored a small piece of my soul. No one else would have known where it was hidden. Why did they cast you out again? He continued, still trying to fathom the reason for Merlice's creation. I might have done something that pissed someone else off. Once again, Dean looked at Father Johnson, performing a nice pirouette. Might have, he only said sarcastically. Causing trouble is one of my many gifts. The demon smiled boyishly, leading to Dean doing a facepalm. He couldn't fathom how an ancient being could be so childish. Nathaniel, on the other hand, seemed to enjoy giving Johnson advice to improve his performance as much as the demon. After enjoying himself, Merlice went to pick up Johnson's sword and hid it under his coat. What is it? Dean asked, getting the otherworldly feeling once again, but his friend wasn't as ready to share about this as with other things, and answered with a reserved expression. There are more powerful weapons in this world than the sword I carry. He looked at the flames, which had started to shrink, before calling out. Johnson, dearest, why don't you come here? Still dancing, the father obeyed without delay. Lovely. Now I want you to dance around the fires like a witch. Father Johnson was about to follow the command when Merlice held him by the shoulder. And give me your vial, if you would be so kind. Without resisting, the priest gave him the vial containing the demon's blood. There's a good chap, Merlice praised before crushing the glass under the heel of his boot. Like a child on Christmas, the old man jumped around the slowly dying fire. Now we can go. Where? Dean's mind still felt foggy from exhaustion. Up, of course. I always wanted to make the Pope dance a jig. Merlice snickered as they made for the stairs. Dean followed, eager to get some fresh air, when another thought struck him. You knew the spell all this time. Why did we even come here? The young man said, thinking how they could have easily avoided the last hour. Merlice turned around, seemingly pondering. I had my suspicions. Mendecius was the god of trickery and deception. I didn't really think about it. He scratched his head. And besides, we get to enchant the Vatican. Dean only sighed. And you got a nice book. They walked in silence, ascending staircase after staircase, when Nathaniel appeared next to Dean. So your own family is hunting you. Dean couldn't help but notice a hint of fatherly care in the older man's voice. My uncle, he corrected. He didn't approve of me inheriting the family after my father died. Must be tough being on the run, says the outlaw. Dean laughed softly. Is it true you fought for slavery? Nathaniel took a deep breath before answering. That's what they branded us with. Final insult, cause we dared to rise up. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Nathaniel waved dismissively with his hand. It is fine, he continued in a softer tone. I fought for my family, my friends, my home. I fought against bluebellies pronouncing themselves our betters. I don't care what the world says. I know my reasons. The cowboy seemed lost in thoughts for a moment before speaking again. You're trying to get to hell. Marius needs to take a look. After we met, he was attacked by demons. It was the first time since he left. Something's wrong down there, and I can't shake the feeling that my dear uncle might be part of this. Dean mused as their different problems connected in his mind like flashing lightning. I'm such a lucky bastard to have met you, Dean Calderwood. My life would have been so boring. Nathaniel grinned, and Dean couldn't help but like the man next to him for his carefree approach to life. What I don't understand is this, he added. What keeping demons from ascending to earth and simply turn the world into hell? Demons have to be summoned. That's why it's so dangerous. If they manage to manipulate you into letting them out of the circle, they can go wherever they wish. Dean let himself sink into deep thoughts. He knew Satan was the only fallen angel capable of opening doors between the planes. If hell planned something, why would he make contact with mortals instead of just opening a door? Upon reaching the upper floors, Marius turned into a black tom cat. Let me take care of the wops here, you go on ahead. The feline creature meowed, the yellow eyes indicating mischievous intent once again. Are you sure you're going to be all right? Dean asked in a low voice, for the demon had started to slow down again as they had ascended the last two staircases. The cat winked before dashing towards the shelves on the dimly lit floor. Careful to make no sound, the three humans made for the next floor, which led them directly to the surface. Leaving the big ornate door opened enough for a cat to pass through, Dean and his friends found themselves in one of the large hallways. The ground was covered in tiles of different colors, creating astonishing patterns, whereas the ceilings showed artistic depictions from the Bible in a Renaissance style. Their boots clicked with every step on the polished ground. It took a few turns for them through the apostolic palace before finding the main hall. Dean was overwhelmed by the building's beauty. Walls and ceiling displayed an artistic marvel consisting of depictions of Jesus as well as scenes from the Old Testament. Ornaments arranged in geometric patterns filled the smaller areas and divided one painting from another. The lower part of the walls was covered in wood and marble, showing more engraved depictions and ornaments. A statue adorned the walls from time to time. All in all, the area must have been 20 feet high and at least 20 feet wide. Nathaniel took off his hat at the sight. Awestruck, the cowboy stared at the beauty this Gothic structure embodied. Dean couldn't blame him. He himself could have stood there for hours and would not be bored of the vast treasure time and faith had put together. Who are you? A stern, manly voice brought them back to reality. An old man clothed in black cardinal robes and a red sash approached them. On his brow formed a deep frown, and his eyes looked as if he had never laughed his entire life. Marius came just in time. Still in the form of a cat, he spoke hastily. Cover your ears until I give you a sign. Without questioning, the three humans covered their ears, whereas the cardinal's eyes widened at the talking animal. Dean saw how Marius moved his lips, upon which the cardinal remained still with the same blank stare Father Johnson did have after hearing the magic words. At the flick of the demon's tail, they uncovered their ears. How can you use the spell? Demons can't perform magical acts. Dean, who did have enough time to ponder the matter, wondered. That is true for summonings, Marius replied breathlessly. He looked very exhausted. But the spell works on a different level. Gets into your tiny human heads and lets you lose your will for some time. What you done to the others below? Nathaniel asked with eager vagary. They're counting the words in the Bible. Merlin smiled weakly. Turning to the cardinal, he continued in an aristocratic voice. We are in dire need of an escort. Would you mind accompanying us? The old man gestured to them to follow before moving towards the large doors leading to the outside world. When suddenly Merlin seemed to have trouble remaining on his paws. Without hesitating, Melissa took the cat into her arms. I don't need to be carried. I am perfectly capable. Shush! Melissa silenced the demon in a motherly tone. The cardinal escorted them to the outer walls of Vatican City, where the guards watched them vigilantly. Merlin had closed his eyes. Dean wasn't sure if the demon had fallen asleep, unconscious, or just remained still until things got better. Ignoring the guard as well as the cardinal, the latter was excessively waving them goodbye. Dean and his friends hurried away through the next best alley. It was a humid night and warm, despite the season. The cobblestones plastering the streets were covered in a red luster, glimmering in the shine of the street lanterns. Without knowing where they went, they hurried through the abandoned streets. Only a few wealthy people were out at this late hour, probably on their way home from a nice evening. People here, they look like kings compared to me, Nathaniel uttered, fumbling with his tattered coat as if the torn fabric would mend if he just tried hard enough. And yet their hearts are colder than yours. Trust me, you're fine. Even if your crappy English doesn't do much to improve your image, Merlin replied, awoken from his slumber-like state. Nathaniel laughed, barely back from the dead and already insulting people. The demon grinned before elegantly jumping to the ground, where he changed his shape. A loud rumbling from Dean's stomach led to an amused glint in the demon's eyes. Come along, he said, still weak, while adjusting his head. I don't want anyone near our horses.